All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your question, go ahead and post it. If you're on a mobile device, it's going to be below the video here. And then if you're on a laptop, desktop computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. So I always start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So let me go ahead and scroll down here. It looks like we already got some questions in here. Good to see. Got a lot of questions in here already. Wow, okay. Usually not that many in here already. All right, so I'm gonna start here with Christopher H. So Christopher H says, I have access to GC Quad and was hopeful I could get some numbers viewed as desirable for a few clubs, including club head data. Other question is your best drill to maintain lag to right leg. I lose it. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So as far as numbers, if you want to get a general idea of what really good numbers are, now it can change like based on your club head speed and things like that. But if you want to get a good general idea of like what the tour players are launching their clubs at and things like that, Google, and this data is available on TrackMan's website. TrackMan is tasked with, whenever you see the numbers, well, they're tasked with tracking all the averages and stuff. They have the top tracer and all that for the PGA, but they're tasked with tracking all the averages and things like that for the PGA Tour. So they have this information on their website. I would just do a Google search of PGA Tour average stats or something like that. I think that would pull it up. If you do like an image search, there's actually let me just try that. PGA Tour average or PGA Tour TrackMan averages. That's what you want to say. TrackMan averages. So if you do that and then you go to the, I believe it's going to be the first one. Yep. So you'll be able to see if you click on the first option there, or you can go to the image there. There's a chart and it tells you for driver, 3-wood, 5-wood, hybrid, all the way down to pitching wedge, kind of what the full swing average is for PGA Tour. So if you're looking at driver club head speed, you're looking at 113. Ball speed, these would be where the average best players in the world are at. Now, it doesn't mean that that's where the absolute best players are at, but they're going to be pretty close to that. So driver club head speed, typically your better players have a higher club head speed, even 113. You look at all the best players in the world, typically all of them are, around 120 in that range, 117 to 120, because distance is really, really important. But spin rates, that's going to be typical. All these things are fairly typical for that. Now, as far as the other numbers are concerned, they're kind of based off these numbers. So if you want to get a general idea of what is actually, really, really good necessarily for you, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But if you want to get some education about that, I'd recommend TrackMan actually has a free education on their website as well, where you can learn about all these parameters and things like that. So it's called TrackMan University. And it's completely free. Like I said, you just sign up, and it's a really good. There's instructional videos in there. I went through it, and it, I went through it a long time ago, when it came out essentially, and it helped me understand more about what all these numbers mean. So yeah, I would recommend checking that out if you want to get a good general understanding. Now, you go on to ask, what is your best drill to maintain lag to the right leg? Really, I just recommend going through the Top Speed Golf lag course. There isn't one drill necessarily it's going to get you there. It takes a lot of reps and time. I wish I could just give you a drill and you're just going to go out there and start nailing it right away. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So I recommend working on our Top Speed lag course and then also the straight line release course to help with that. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. So some drills are going to resonate a little bit better with people than others. So, I would just kind of, work through it and, try to find the drills that resonate better for you as you work through them. Give a drill its due diligence, give it a try. I wouldn't necessarily expect to see instant results, but basically, everything, it's all about, getting the hands to lead a little bit. There could be other things that are going on in your swing specifically to you that that are giving you issues. So sorry, I wish I could give you something specific. You go do this one thing, and you're going to get that lag that you're looking for. But it really just comes down to putting in the time and repetition, and in working through the system and things like that. So I'd recommend working through the top speed lag course and the straight line release course. So once you actually get to where you're starting to get stepped on something there. Once you get to where in the start of the downswing, you're not going like this. Once you get to where you're starting to do this, but you still lose the lag, I'd be looking at the straight line release course and possibly the move course. You can look at your swing as well. If you're coming down steep, a lot of times when people are trying to get this sharp angle, what happens is they really pull down the club and they get like this. And when the club is steep like this, you typically are going to stand up and flip at impact to kind of correct that. So make sure when you're working on the lag that you're also not getting this club really, really steep and cupping that wrist. So that's essentially what the move is shallowing out the club and squaring the face earlier. So the move, the straight line release, the top speed lag course, these are all going to be courses that can help you. Now, if you're looking for specific help with this and you want me to take a look at your swing and say, Christopher, this is exactly what you need to do to be on the right track, then I'd highly recommend signing up for my swing reviews. Actually, I think I had a spot open this morning. So if you are interested in doing the swing reviews, go click in the top right-hand corner and select Get a Review, and that'll take you to the swing reviews page. If that spot is still there, go ahead and claim it. If not, join the waiting list. So that way, whenever I do open up spots, because sometimes spots just open up randomly as people cancel, go on vacations, and are unable to practice and stuff for a while, so they end up canceling. Well, whenever somebody cancels, typically a spot will open up. So sporadically, every now and then there might be a spot open. I wouldn't plan on there being one there, but every now and then there is. And I think as of earlier this morning, there was a spot available. So if you're interested, it's first come, first serve. So go over to the website there and grab a spot if it's available. If not, join the waiting list. So that way, because I try whenever I can, when everything's free up for me, I try to. And then when that happens, we send out an email to the waiting list. And again, it's first come, first served to that waiting list, and then they'll sign up from there. So if you're interested, go over there and grab it. I haven't gotten any emails. Yeah, so pretty sure that spot's still there. Let me double check it real quick. Actually, it was taken. So yeah, if you're interested, go ahead and join the waiting list. Then I didn't get an email on it, so not really sure what's going on there. But all right. Anyway, neither here nor there. But yeah, it's just hard. The only thing I can tell you is lag, the lag course, the move course, and the straight line release course. These are all going to be courses that are going to help you with that. And I would go in that order: lag, the move, straight line release, or you could go lag, the move, or lag, straight line release, and the move. You can kind of work on the move and the straight line release at the same time because they go hand in hand with each other. All these courses kind of have a connection to each other, so you can kind of work on some of them at the same time, but I just be careful not to get completely overloaded. So Matt P says, is there a particular exercise you'd recommend to strengthen the muscles in the right shoulder? Ever since learning the move, my right shoulder has gotten tender and gone away in a few days on its own. I'm sure there's some new muscles being activated I haven't used a lot in my old swing. So again, I really apologize, folks. As far as exercises, I mean, I'm not a fitness expert, so there really isn't anything. I mean, I would recommend asking a fitness expert on that. But the reason why you might have some right shoulder tenderness is that when you're not used to the arm externally rotating, so that's right here, you're basically using these muscles right here to make that happen. So, if you're really trying to force it in somewhere, that may be why it's more difficult. So what I would recommend is look at your spine angle and make sure that you're not leaning toward the target. So if you're leaning toward the target and then trying to do the move, like you're moving your arm way more than you need to, right? Whereas if I'm more angled away, I can very easily, it's a much more natural position. It's basically just my arm at my side, right? It's just here, then the arm at my side, right? So I would look at things that are going on in your swing that's having excessive movement, making sure that your spine angle is correct. If you have a really like a flying elbow, up here, and maybe you're going really, really across the line, that's a lot of movement that's got to happen. It doesn't mean that it's not possible, but I would maybe try elevating the arms a little bit so that way it's easier to drop that in. There's all kinds of things going on there, but as far as a right shoulder exercises and things like that, that's going to be something for a physical therapist or something like that. Like, I apologize. I wish I was an expert, but actually legally, I can't really give you any actual physical exercises to do just because I'm not qualified to do that. So, but as far as golf instruction is concerned, I would look at your swing on video and see what's going on with the movement of your shoulder. And, the soreness, it could just be from using muscles that you're not used to, which I would say is probably completely normal. But as far as there could be other things going on there that are excessive and not really natural. We don't want it to be, eventually we don't want it to be something that's going to be a soreness factor kind of thing. So that's what I would look at. Make sure your spine angle is angled away. Look at this position of the elbow at the top and maybe try to get the hands a little bit higher so that it doesn't have to like really force its way. It can kind of naturally move into position. I kind of look at what's going on there. So James M says, I cross a line in my swing and wondering if it results in a loss of power or control. If yes, why? It just depends. It really just depends. There's no, I don't mind across the line. If you look at like a Freddie Couples, right? He's got, now if you're really, really short, like you have your hands really, really short and you're across the line like that, that's typically going to be a loss of power because you're pushing your face open, your elbow is out, and then you're typically going to come over the top or stand up and flip and things like that. There's typically going to be a loss of power there. But if you look like a Freddie Couples and you actually have your hands pretty vertical, but you're a little across the line at the top, typically you can get that to work down pretty easily and be in a great position. And if anything, it can actually help you add power because the club is traveling a further distance. Like if it's right there versus right there, the club's traveling further because it's going back and then it's going here a little bit. So it can actually add a little bit of distance. But if you're really, really short and across the line, typically you're going to add things. You're going to have to make compensations in your downswing to get the club to be on plane. And a lot of times you can't do that, and that's going to lose power. Like you're not going to transfer as much energy to the golf ball because it's going to be hard to compress it because it's going to be hard to come in with a square face. It's going to be hard to come down on path. It's going to be hard to hit it in the center of the face. So that's a loss of power. That's a distance leak right there. So it really just depends. Sometimes we're off to an interesting start here with these questions because a lot of these questions, I wish I could give you like an actual answer, but it's difficult because I don't actually know what's going on with your swing specifically because a lot of it just depends. It just depends on what's going on there. So I look at your swing on video and see what's going on there. Meaning you don't really elevate your arms very much and then go across the line, cup the wrists and get this elbow way out there like that. And if you are, that could be an issue. I try to elevate your arms more and get that club a little bit more down the line. Now, if you're elevating the arms and then going a little bit more across the line, that's typically fine because, like I said, you're going to have space to get that club to work underneath. But if you're short like this and across the line, you don't really have any time to get that club, to get that elbow to work in. It's typically going to get stuck behind you, or you're going to come over the top. There's just lots of issues that usually come from that position. So Andrew P says, to free up my hips, I have tried pointing the left foot behind the ball. I.e. well tied in. I strike the ball solid. This was as I am able to get a full turn, which removes tendency to swing over the, I don't know that word, etiolated, or yeah, I don't know. I think that might be a typo or something. And hit everything straight left. Is this feasible way to play? To free up my hips, I have tried pointing the left foot behind the ball. Well tied in, i.e. well tied in. I don't know what that means. I strike the ball solid. This was, yeah, Andrew, you mind asking in like a little different way? I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble understanding exactly what you're asking. There's lots of like typos and stuff. I'm not really sure. I wish I could answer your question. I don't really know what you're trying to say, so it's hard for me to know if it's feasible or not. So Rick T says, I tilt to the right for my drives and swing hard. My hands tend to roll over and cause bad hook left. I believe that despite trying to shallow my swing, the right hand takes over. So I would look on video to see what's actually going on. So feel isn't always real. So we have to look at video to see what's really going on. If you're shallowing the swing, you may be over shallowing it because basically what causes a hook is the face being too close to your path, right? So we have to understand when we say shallowing or when you hear shallowing, really it just means getting the club on plane sooner and or underneath the plane just a little bit. So if you go up to the top and then go like that, right, and then swing through, right, the club's working way too much to the inside compared to it's probably going to be working in to out way too much. And then to save it at the end, you may roll the hands over hard to try to square it up, and then you get that snap hook. Your best case scenario is you might get like a heavy draw, a ball that starts to the right and then draws pretty hard to the left, but on target. But typically what's probably going to happen if you shallow the club too much and then whip that club through there like that is you're going to get the face too close and you're going to get that hook. So I would go, if you go to the last lesson of the move, Clay talks about how to get that club to where you're not overdoing it anymore. So I look at your swing on video and I draw a line that goes up from your hosel of the club up through your trail elbow. And I'd make sure you have this camera angle correct. Set it up about down your toe line here and about waist level and far away that you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. And if you draw a line from the hosel of the club up through the point of the elbow, what we want to see is that club, when that lead arm gets about parallel to the ground, we want to see this club parallel or slightly shallower to that elbow plane line is what we call it. If you're way too shallow to it, if you're more than a few degrees, a couple degrees shallower to it, then you're probably over shallowing it. And then the club's working too much from the inside and you're having to save it at the end. That's where the hooks are coming from. So just ease off of the shallowing a little bit and it'll more than likely get you to a point where you feel like you don't have to roll the hands over hard at impact to try to save it. And you can turn much better through there. And that's going to be the last video of the move course. I believe it's the last video where Clay talks about that. All right, so Carl C says, I am fairly fit, 69-year-old, 5'7", tall, 165 pounds, athletic, but not muscular. Have played golf for 40 years. Lowest handicap was 15. All right. No physical limitations. I can turn my shoulders 100 degrees going back, 135 degrees going forward. What is realistic club head speed for me to get with my driver? 110, 105, 195, 90. Again, it's hard for me to know. So if you think about, everyone's a little bit different. I know you just reeled off a lot of, all these things, but everyone is different. So it's really impossible for me to know what's necessarily feasible or realistic. But what I'd recommend doing is working through our 20-minute distance fix course, because people, wherever you're at right now, with your playing speed, typically people gain 12 to 13 miles per hour going through the 20-minute distance fix. So I would take whatever you're at right now. If you've never done speed training before, whatever you're at right now, which I'd assume it would be under 90 miles per hour, and I would just add 10 miles per hour to that, and I would say that that would be feasible. It's just hard to say. If you think about Rory McIlroy, right? So Rory McIlroy is 5'8", 180 pounds. You know, when he's 69 years old, he's probably going to be close to, I mean, he's probably going to lose some muscle. You know, he's probably going to be, you know, probably about your size. He's probably going to be right in about the same size. So what would I think Rory McIlroy, what would he be able to do? I mean, I have a hard time thinking that Rory McIlroy won't be able to swing over 100 miles per hour. So it just depends. I've had 70-year-old students that swing 110 miles per hour. So it really just depends. Everyone's a little bit different, but I would say wherever you're at right now, if you haven't gone through the speed training 20-minute distance fix course, odds are you'll be able to, because the average is 13. So odds are you'll be able to get, you know, 10 more miles per hour or more from wherever you're at right now. If you've done speed training before, after you've gone through initially our speed training program, it's a 3-week program. After you've gone through it, the progression slows down, right? So if you've already gone through the program, I would say, you know, if you go through it again a second time, you might be able to gain half as much as you did the first time through it, maybe. But I would expect there to definitely be a decline. But like I said, everyone's a little bit different. What I'd recommend doing is you know, just going out there and doing it. Go out there and try to get as much as you can. Get out of your comfort zone and swing with 100% effort. Go through the speed training. I think it's a lot of fun. So if you're athletic, no physical limitations, and you can go out there and do the speed training, then I highly recommend that you do that. So I would say based on what you said, you should definitely be higher than average. And your average, the best players in the world, like your Champions Tour type players, they're around, the average is 102. There's definitely going to be some that swing faster than that. But the best players in the world are around 102. For the amateur players, which I would say that you're probably above, you know, your handicap is probably around what average would be. But as far as your physical attributes, I would say that it sounds like you're in much better shape than probably most people that are near 70 years old. But their average is around 82, 85, somewhere in there, I believe. So, you know, I would say shooting for over 100 miles per hour, that would be really good. But like I said, wherever you're at right now, as long as you haven't done any speed training before, you haven't gone, well, I shouldn't say that. You haven't gone through our speed training program. If you haven't done it, the 20-minute distance fix, then I would say it would be, I would expect to get about 10 more miles per hour from wherever you're at right now. So if you want to go through the 20-minute distance fix, click the house icon at the top of the page, then scroll down, and you'll see a list of all the courses. Get working on that 20-minute distance fix and start getting your speed up. All right, so Gufrane says, how to play a downhill breaking putt, how to top spin the ball. Do you use toe of putter in downhill putting? All right, so several questions there. So for a downhill putt, there really isn't anything you need to do different. It might be a little bit more of a deliberate stroke, depending. But for the most part, it's going to be the same, you know, kind of stroke that you would use. It's just you just wouldn't hit it as hard, right? Now, if it's a really downhill slider, so basically, you know, if it's a stroke, because it's hard to only go like that, right? If it's a putt that would only require that you basically tap the ball, you just need to get it started. If that's the case, it may be beneficial to try to hit it off the toe of the club, because what that does is it deadens it, right? So if I have a ball here, grab this ball, doesn't even phase there. So if I hit this one, kind of in the center of the face, and I hit it like that, you can see, I mean, my carpet is slow here. Then you can see that rolled about 1.5 feet. If I take that same kind of stroke and I hit it off the toe here, you can see it only rolled about 1 foot. So it deadened it quite a bit. So yeah, if it's just a putt where you just got to basically get it started, hitting it off the toe can be kind of a little hack, a little trick that you can do that, but you don't need to do that on every downhill putt. If it's kind of a normal, if it's not a putt where you just have to get it started, I'd recommend just trying to hit it solid, as good as you can, and get the putt started on the right line, because that's really what's most important for these downhill putts, and these putts that have some kind of these downhill sliders. The speed and the line, having those matched up are really, really important. And if you just toe it a little bit, then it's really, really difficult to get that to really mesh up really well. If it's, like I said, if it's just a putt where you just have to get the ball started and just let it kind of trickle down to the hole, and you're not really necessarily trying to make it, you're just trying to not putt it 15 feet by the hole, then sure, yeah, doing that little hack where you putt it off the toe would be completely fine. Now, as far as putting topspin on the ball, the main thing is to just not hit down on it, right? So we don't want to be de-lofting it too much and then hitting down on it. If you do that, it's going to pop in there. So all these putters, even this old Bullseye putter, has 3 or 4 degrees of loft on it. And the reason why there's loft on it is because when the ball is on the green, it's sitting down in the grass. So we need loft to actually lift it up out of the grass just a little bit and to get it rolling. So ideally what would happen is that when you hit a putt, if you look at the line on there, and I'll show you a little trick how you can kind of check and see this. If you look on the line on there, basically when you putt it, this line will actually kind of go, it will kind of go like this when you putt it, because you're lifting it out, and then it will start to tumble over. That's if you have a really, really good pure roll on it. Now, if you are hitting down on it, basically, what will happen is it will kind of pop down, right? And then it will start bouncing, and that's not going to put a good roll on it. And then if you have too much loft, right, you kind of hit up on it too much, it will go like this. It will actually start to backspin a little bit, and it will be more airborne, and it will actually start to backspin a little bit. And then it will kind of skid when it hits, and then start to tumble over once it gets on the green. So to get a nice pure roll, like I said, what you want is this putter to just lift it out and have that line on there, basically not really do much. Now, if it goes a little bit back or a little bit forward, that's fine. But the main thing is we don't want it lifted way up and have it going like that, and we don't want it to be popping down into it. Now, a way that you can do this is you can take your phone, most of these down on it, right? So I would try to get the ball a little bit more forward in your stance. That's going to promote a more level angle of attack on it. So that's one thing you can do, if that's what's happening. Now, you could be also, maybe you have that putter or you have it, your angle of attack is good, but you're de-lofting it too much. So your hands are maybe too far forward, and you're hitting level, but the loft is too low, so it's actually hitting it down into the ground. If that's the case, I would try to get the putter a little bit more upright, and then swing nice and level. Now, if you get it to where it's too, it's lifting up, you can see it's getting too much in the air and it's starting to backspin on you, then you could have it too far forward and you're hitting up on it, and you may want to move it to where it can come in more level. You can also be adding loft. Oftentimes when I see people add loft, it's because they get a little bit risky at the end. So you want to make sure you keep your hands solid and present that ball with some loft that just helps it lift up out of it. So you can use that camera trick to kind of see what's going on there. They also make these felt boards. I'm not sure exactly. I think Eyeline Golf used to sell them. I'm not sure if they do anymore. But basically, there's these felt boards that you can get, and you can make one. I mean, it's just felt on a board. So if you can go to your local fabric store, a thin piece of wood, and then just put a few feet of this board, just kind of glue it on there. You can make one pretty easily, and I would just kind of have it all pushed in one direction, and then when you putt on it, it will roll on it and create a pattern on the board. And if you see it kind of dribbling, that means that you're either hitting down on it. If that dribble is happening right away, that means that you're hitting down on it. If basically where the ball is, then there was nothing, and then it starts to dribble a lot, then that means that you're hitting up on it too much. You have too much loft, and you're putting backspin on it. If it's coming, if you see it just barely lift out, and then it's a nice clean roll after that, then that would be the tour caliber. That's how the ball is kind of hugging the green as you're going through there. So there's a couple ways you can do that. Again, just to review, you can take your slow motion camera and kind of see what's going on, and set it up. And you can also use something like a felt board. You can make one, or I'm not sure who sells them anymore, and you can see how smooth that roll is, and work on a little bit better. It's probably the felt board's probably the easier thing to practice for sure. All right, so Michael J says, good morning, Q. I just want to say thanks to you and Clay for the fantastic toss glass system and website. I've been watching the videos, working on my swing and practicing. I'm seeing results. Thank you to all you guys do. Thanks, MJ. Glad to hear. Keep up with the hard work, man. All right, so she says, I think my hips are too active on the downswing, producing push shots. Have you got a drill to fix? So it may not necessarily be that your hips are too active. It's probably more that your upper body just isn't in sync with your lower body. So really, I can open up my hips as much as I. It's just a matter of having my upper body in sync with that. So let's say if I open up my hips a ton, and then I let my arm kind of get stuck behind me, which I'm guessing this is what's happening with you. If I open up my hips a ton, I get the arm stuck behind me. I've got to get this arm in front of my body somehow. There's two ways to do it. One is to throw the arms, right? Which is probably what you're doing. Getting it stuck, and then you're throwing the arms in front and swinging a lot into out, and that's causing the blocks. Or the other way is kind of like what a Jim Furyk does. You just keep rotating a ton. Now, not everyone's going to be physically capable of doing that, so that's probably not a feasible option for most. So what I would recommend doing is getting the arms more in sync with the upper body, and that's going to be coming from getting that elbow to work more in to the body there. So there's a couple drills that I'd recommend doing. One is this one arm drill. So you take your wrist, bend it back like this, right, with your lead hand. Now take that and put it right up against the back of your arm there, and just do some swings where you're just focusing on getting that elbow to work in front here. And that's going to force you to get this club to be working down nicely. Now you can see here, as I'm opening up, that club is working down nicely down my trail forearm, and I'm coming in a nice, good position here. So doing some swings with that, do it without the golf ball at first, go slow, get comfortable with it. Then you can try to actually hit some golf balls doing that. That's one thing you can do to kind of get the sense of how the elbow should work. Another way is with a ball here. So this ball, I think I got it at Target. It's a couple dollars. It's about volleyball size. It's really, really light, kind of rubber kind of ball. And what you can do is you take this ball and put it right between your arms, just like this, right on the joints there. And you can take some swings doing this. So I do this without a golf ball at first, but you can do some swings doing this. And you can see if I really thrust over my hips and get my elbow stuck behind me, right, the ball might stay in there because I may get it next to my body. But basically, you can see I'm separating my elbows together, and then I get the club working too much behind, and I have to flip and throw the club in front at the end. So what I would try to do is I'd go up to the top here, and then as you're starting down, I'd actually try to squeeze that ball as you're coming down, and that's going to get that club in a much, much better position. So really, you probably just need to get your upper body in sync with your lower body there. So those are just some drills, a couple drills that I saw online that I thought were really, really good for that, and have worked really, really good with my students as well. All right, so next question here. So William S. says, near the end of yesterday's office hours, you hinged the club and turned. Is this preferable? I hinged the club and turned. Is it easier than taking the club back below waist level and finish turning? Let me read that again. You hinged the club and turned. Is this preferable, easier than taking the club back below the waist and finish turning? I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. William, if you hinged the club and turned, you hinged the club and turned. You're talking about in the backswing, hinging the club and then turning. I guess I'm not really sure exactly what you're asking, William. If you mind giving me a little bit more, I'll be happy to help. So Byron H says, at setup, which part of the ball should be looking at, top, back, front, and why? It's really personal preference. I like to look at the part of the ball that I'm trying to hit. So if I'm trying to hit a straight shot, that's typically going to be the very back of the golf ball. If I'm trying to hit a draw, I might look at the kind of the outside part of the golf ball. So let me grab, here we go. Let's pretend this lacrosse ball is a golf ball. So here I am, I'm at setup, I'm looking down at the golf ball. If I'm just trying to hit a straight shot, I'll probably just think about hitting the very, very back. I'll focus right there on the back of the golf ball. If I'm trying to hit a draw, I may focus on a little bit of the outside of the golf ball. The reasoning for that is that when you're trying to hit a draw, you're trying to have the face closed to your path. So I'm swinging, I'm basically swinging in that direction, but I'm trying to hit the golf ball, this part of the golf ball. So swinging in that direction with this part of the golf ball. I typically only think that if I'm really trying to hook one or something like that. Typically, I still focus on the back of the ball if I'm just trying to hit a normal draw. But if I'm really trying to hook one, I may try to think about that. Basically swinging out to first base and trying to hit the part of the ball that would be pointing toward third base. That's what I try to think about. That helps me to kind of get that feeling of wrapping the head around the golf ball. The same thing for a fade. If I'm trying to hit a fade, if I'm trying to hit a big old slice, I may focus on swinging out to in with trying to hit this inside part of the golf ball. So I may focus on that inside part of the golf ball. But again, everyone's a little bit different. Some people don't like to focus on a certain point, just like to look at the golf ball. I would just, if you want to focus on, aim small, miss small, right? There's that old saying. I like to focus on the very, very back of the golf ball, the part of the golf ball that I'm trying to hit. But really, you can try out different things. That doesn't mean that that's what everyone needs to do. It's not what I would call a universal truth. It's just what I do and what I think a lot of players do that help them the most. You may find that always focusing on the side of the golf ball or the front of the golf ball or just looking in that area works the best for you instead of focusing on one point. You just got to try out and see what works best for you. So Gufran A says, thanks to Clay and Q for their dedication and teaching. Great lesson. No problem, Gufran. Glad I could help. So Gary W says, hello, Q. Just starting with TSG. The swing speed monitor should arrive in 4 days. I started with the stable and fluid spine section. Should I complete this before doing the 20-minute distance fix? Totally up to you. You can complete it if you want, or you can go right into the 20-minute distance fix, or if you have a lot of time to practice, you can do both. So basically the 20-minute distance fix, to kind of go through the program and do it the way that's laid out, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 hours a week. Because if you look at, there's 2 range sessions and then 1 home session. And just as a side note, you can do the home session as a range session as well. You don't have to do. We just gave people. We always like to give people stuff that they can do right at home as well, but it's not required. If you're able to get out there and get to the range 3 days a week, then go ahead and do the home portion at the range as well. But if you look at that, it's 20 minutes for the drills because it's 20 swings a minute apart. But you're going to go there and you're going to warm up, right? And you may do some other things as well, when you go there and practice. So I would say each range session is probably going to be, or each practice session is probably going to be about a half hour at least. 10 to 15 minutes of warming up, and then the 20-minute distance fix. And then, if you want to count the time going to and from the range as well, that would count in there. And then there's content that you need to watch, right? So there's probably about each week, there's probably at least 30 minutes to an hour of content. So you're looking at 2 hours to 3 hours a week, depending on how far you live away from the range. The further you live away from the range, then there's going to be more. But that's what you're looking at as a time commitment per week for the 20-minute distance fix. The Toss Golf system, if you have extra time to practice, then sure, you can give more time and do it that way. It's completely up to you. All right, so Goof Ryan says, I shot 79 yesterday, 40 front, 39 back, and with 2 months, my handicap dropped from 16 to 14. CSG system, need to practice 1,000 swings as I recommend. I will sign up for masterclass program to lower my handicap. That's a good plan. Yeah. Sounds like you're on the right track. So John L says, at what point in the swing is the club head moving the fastest? If not at impact, why not? It's at impact. Impact's where the club head's moving the fastest. It's the bottom of the arc. That's where it's moving the fastest. So Tyler T says, hey Q, the move has completely changed the consistency and distance with my driver and long irons. It made golf a lot more fun. However, I'm a lot less consistent now with shorter irons and wedges when approaching the green. Any idea what I'm doing wrong with those shorter irons? Tyler, can you give me more information on what exactly the inconsistency is? What's the miss? Typically, there's a tendency, right? So maybe it's all thin shots. Maybe it's chunks. Maybe it's too much drawing, which typically probably isn't the case with shorter clubs. Give me some insight here onto what's going on. I'll try to help the best I can. So Donald P says, have been all arms in the past, now struggling with timing of the hip turn. When looking at video, still looks like I'm square to the ball at time of hitting, therefore flipping the club. Is this just a matter of continuing to do the drills? So basically that hip turn is starting right away. So the best advice I can really give you, and the best feeling I can really give you, is to basically try to open up your body as much as you can and swing out to the right as much as you can. Because if you're coming into contact, right, your hips are square, right? So my hips are here, and my swing direction is also right here. It's also right in front of my body, assuming that I'm swinging on plane when my hips aren't opening up. So if I do that same thing, if I have that same relationship, and then I open up my body, well, I'm going to swing like that. Intuitively, you're not going to do that. You're going to stall your hips to get that club to work in front of the body, because that's what you're comfortable with. So what you need to do is you need to have the body opening as much as you can, and then swing to the right as much as you can. And if I were to keep my hips square and swing to the right as much as I can, you can see I'd be swinging out in that direction. But now if I open up my hips and do that, right, now I'm swinging on plane. I'm swinging right on plane where I need to be. So that's what I would try to feel. I'd try to feel like that you're opening up the hips as much as you can to the left if you're right-handed, and you're swinging out to the right as much as you can. It's almost like if you're bowling, right? If I were to toss this ball, if I were to take a ball and I were to try to toss it that way, I wouldn't go like that, right? If I wanted to toss it with any kind of power, I would go like that if I wanted to toss it with power. Just like in bowling, right? In bowling, when professional bowlers, they have a lot of power, right? They don't bowl the ball like that, right? They bowl the ball like this. They really open up their body and whip their hips through, and it's swinging along the side of their body. That's what you need to feel like when you're working through that. So you gotta get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You're not gonna, if it feels comfortable for you, then it's not different enough, right? So you gotta get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and try to get out of your comfort zone and understand, hey, it's probably not going to be a great shot right off the bat. You may chunk it, you may thin it, you may miss it, right? But you got to get the motion down first, and then the contact will come after you get more comfortable with it. But yeah, it's definitely going to come down to doing some reps for sure. And if you want help with that, I'd recommend signing up for Swing Reviews to get a good idea. So that way we can take a look and see what exactly you need to do, because there may be, there's all kinds of reasons why that may not be happening for you. So, it's impossible to really know what exactly you need to do. It's more just trying different things to get back there, because you could be coming down steep, you could be casting, you could be just flipping to square the face, and that doesn't give you time to open up your hips. You could be not getting any flex in your hips. There could be all kinds of things going on. So you kind of have to put the puzzle together to figure out exactly what it is. But if you think I have to open up my body as much as I can and swing out to the right as much as I can, that typically helps quite a bit more. All right, so Floyd V says, during the transition, should you focus on dropping hands on the target line to avoid the over the top? I'd recommend getting the club. It's more about the club, right? It's not so much about the hands. It's more about the club and what the club is doing. So if you focus on what the club is doing, your hands will typically be in a good place. So if I'm really focused, because this is what I see all the time with people who are working on shallowing out the club, they think in terms of their hands shallowing out. And what happens is they get the club back here, and the hands are really, really deep and shallowed out, and then they pull down, and then what happens to the club? My hands are really shallow, they're really back here, but now this club's getting steep. This is the only thing that matters right here. And then what happens? They swing over the top, or they start down steep, and then they stand up and flip at the end. Whereas I can also, now most people aren't going to do this, but I can also get my hands way out here and then have the club in a good spot. Now, typically people aren't. Brooks Koepka does this a little bit. His hands are a little bit more out in front of him than most, and he shallows it quite a bit more than most and turns a little bit. So there's ways of doing it, but you really just want to focus on what the club is doing. Get the club in a right position, and that's what's going to help you the most. So I wouldn't now focus on what your hands are doing to make that happen can help, but I would put most of my focus on where this club head is going in space, and that can help you to get it in the right position. So Andrew P says it was a typo, meant to stay toed. All right, let me go back to what he had. Freed up my hips and tried the left foot behind the ball. Well toed in. Let me try this again. To free up my hips, I have tried pointing left foot behind the ball. If you're right-handed and you're trying to point your left foot behind the ball, I wouldn't recommend doing that, because that's gonna restrict your turn if that's what you're saying. Strike the ball solid. I was able to get full turn, which removes tendency to swing over the top and hit everything straight left. I wouldn't recommend having the toe in like this. Is that what you're saying? I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, because that's going to restrict you. I mean, you could get away with it if you have some incredible ability to internally rotate in your hip, but most people don't. So unless you just have a ton of flexibility in your hip and you're able to do that, that's probably going to. So instead of doing this, what I'd recommend is allowing the heel to come off the ground. So I'd recommend setting up to it actually slightly open. For most people, that's going to be a good position. And to get that full turn, I would just let this heel come off the ground. Because when I come down in the downswing, I want to be able to open my body, and my leg is internally rotating in my hip to make that happen. If I'm set up kind of pigeon-toed like this, I get right here. I can't turn anymore, right? Now, maybe you have incredible flexibility in your hip and you're able to keep turning even though your hip is turned in, even though your toes turned in, but it just makes it really, really difficult. It's not really a very feasible way, I would say. So if it works for you, then fine, but man, I feel like it's going to put a lot of wear and tear kind of in your hip joint here. So if you set up a little bit open and just free up this heel, let it come off the ground when you turn, then that will allow you to get a good shoulder turn. then you just put it back on the ground in the downswing, and now your foot's opened up and you can really turn through there a lot better. Basically, if you look at every tour player, if you look at their footwork, as they're coming down, their lead foot, this front part's kind of coming off the ground, and it's usually like twisting open like that. If you look at Jordan Spieth, he like goes on his heel. If you look at Bubba Watson, he actually kind of comes off the ground a lot of times. If you look at Gary Woodland, his foot just completely turns open like that. So there's all kinds of ways to do it, but you're typically going to see that foot kind of turn open unless the player is very, very flexible in the hip. Like a Rory McIlroy, he's very, very flexible in his hips. So you really don't see his foot come off the ground very much. It pretty much stays flat on the ground. But he's super flexible in his hips. Maybe you are too, but still setting up with the toe in like that is going to restrict you, even if you are flexible, most likely anyway. All right. Let's go back up. All right, so James P says, on the downswing, should my arms try to actively power the swing through the ball, or do the arms passively swing through as a result of the body rotation slinging them through? So I get questions like this all the time where people ask me, am I consciously doing this? Am I actively doing this? And so on and so forth. So the answer to the question is, unfortunately, it depends, because feel is relative, right? So what you feel in the swing and what I feel in the swing and what Clay feels and other people feel, it's all going to be different, right? So the answer to the question is really you're unconsciously doing it because you have what's called unconscious competence. You went through the levels of learning. Now, as far as what's actually, you are using your arms in the swing. But if you're someone who is used to using all arms in their swing and you don't use your body at all, you may want to feel like the arms and everything is leaving everything behind. That may be what you want to feel, even though that's not the reality, but that may be what you want to feel. So if you look at your swing and it looks like this, right? There's not a lot of hip movement, and it's just the arms flying. You may want to feel like your swing is more like this as you're coming in, right? But if you're someone who's not really getting a lot of power from your arms, which would be highly unlikely, because most people are going to really throw those arms. But if you're someone who's coming in like this, right, and you're not really throwing with the arms very much, you may want to feel a little bit more of that arm power. I guarantee you, let's go back to this. Jack Nicklaus, for instance, he's got this saying, or he's got this quote where he said he feels like he can't release the club fast enough. Well, that feeling for 99% of players is probably not going to be a good one, right? Because if you feel like I can't release this club fast enough, typically it's going to look like that, right? So, but to him, that feeling of not being able to release that club fast enough put him in a position where he was releasing it out here, right? So everybody's a little bit different. So you just have to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. Most likely, because you're probably not a professional golfer, you're probably an amateur golfer on here trying to get help. You most likely need to feel like the arms aren't really actively using a lot of power, and feel like the body's kind of slinging the club through impact. That may be what you need to feel like until you actually need to, until that becomes real and you actually need to start adding some power to it. So, but odds are when you try to do that, you're probably still going to be adding power with the arms. It's just going to feel like you're not, because feel isn't always real, right? So Andrew P says, if I turn my left foot inwards, pointing behind my hips, get free up, and I can make a full turn. With the left foot square or flared out, the target hips get locked. I can't make a full turn, hit everything left. So yeah, so I would let that heel off the ground. Because if it works for you, then it works for you. But it's got to be locking up your swing, unless you just have really incredible internal rotation in your hips. Maybe you're built differently than most people. All right. So William F says secondary spine tilt. If it's 6 to 10 degrees, 8 degrees nominally Is it less for a wedge than it would be for a driver? It can be, but that usually happens automatically. So, you know, with a driver, I'm typically a wider stance, ball's more forward in the stance. I'm going to be more like this. You know, that happens. It's not really something I'm trying to do. It's just by virtue of where the ball position is and my stance being a little bit wider. Whereas a wedge is more like this with the stance and, you know, about shoulder width apart, and the ball is more in the middle of my stance. I'm going to be more like this when I come into contact. So it's not something I really have to actively think about to make happen. It just happens by virtue of my stance being in the right direction, or my stance width and the ball placement. All right, so I apologize. I'm probably not going to be able to get to everybody's questions today, but we'll answer a couple more here. Just did a V1 video to see my swing. Notice club seems steep at the top, and brim of my hat is pulling back about 6 inches at impact. How do I correct? I'd recommend working on the move, because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about the club being like this, and then you kind of go like that as you're coming in. Well, that's you making a compensation for this club being steep to be able to get this club to work down from the inside. So what you want is to get this club shallowing out, so that way I don't have to make a compensation to get this club from the inside. It's already there. I can stay in my posture and rotate through, and that is the move course. So the move course is all about getting the club to shallow out early in the downswing and getting that face squared up earlier in the downswing as well. So I highly recommend the move course. If you want to go check it out, click the house icon and then scroll down and check out the move course there. You'll see a list of all the courses. All right, probably one more question here, and then I got to head out. So Michael H says, I was having a lot of difficulty with my drive lately. Almost always slicing. My irons, woods, and hybrids all seem fine. I realized that by moving the ball further back in my stance, my drives, I was having better contact and no slices. Is the only thing I stand to lose by doing the list little speed and distance? If so, I'll sacrifice that for consistent straight drives or a bit short. So no, you're not necessarily going to lose speed and distance. You're not necessarily going to lose speed moving the ball a little bit back. So you may have had the ball too far forward, and because of that, you probably swung a little bit over the top, and because your club's working around your body, right? So the club's working, it's into out, into out, into out, and now it's out to in, out to in, out to in. So if the ball is more forward in my stance, I'm going to be going more out to in when I get to the golf ball. And that's you know, if my face is open to my path, that's where I'm going to get the slice. So the ball may have been too far forward in your stance, and moving the ball a little bit further back in your stance got you to where you were on a better plane. The other thing, that if that wasn't the case, it's hard to say without seeing your swing exactly what was going on there. But one thing you can do is you can kind of drop your trail foot back a little bit to make it easier to swing more from the inside. So that way you're coming in, your club's working into out, into out. Now it gets to the golf ball, and then after the golf ball, it's working out to in. So you can try that, dropping that foot back and trying to swing more from the inside, and see if that helps you. Because you could, if you move the ball too far back, you're not really going to be sacrificing speed, but you may be sacrificing a little bit of distance because you may be hitting down on it a little bit and launching it a little bit too low. And if you moved it more forward, you need to hit a little bit more up on it and then drop the foot back. That'll allow you to get that path more plane. So something you can try to help with that. But yeah. So again, everybody, I apologize if I wasn't able to answer some of your questions. I know we got some questions in here that I wasn't able to answer. So so sorry about that. But everybody, thanks for joining me. Actually, there's just a couple more. All right, so I'll answer these real quick. I do gotta get going, but I'll answer these real quick. So William S says, trying again, starting the backswing yesterday. It seemed you suggested hinging wrists, then start turning. A few 2SG videos seem to turn club first, then lift either one. Better to get hands higher or backswing. PS Office Hour is a great resource link. Thanks. So you can, it's really personal preference. So basically, I think what he's trying to say is hinge the club and go up versus go up and then hinge the club at the top. It's really personal preference. I typically like to see the club going back more and then the hinging later, just because if I hinge the club right here, you can see my shoulders really haven't turned much by the time the club's gotten to parallel. Whereas if I hinge later, you can see once I get to parallel hill, look how much more of my shoulders have turned. So getting that little wider takeaway initially makes it easier to get a bigger shoulder turn, which is really, really important. That's one of the pieces of the Costa Golf system. There's a drill in the power turn course to get a wide takeaway. And then the other thing is that a lot of times if you hinge this club early and you kind of fully hinge it and then bring it up, there's not as much momentum going in this direction that may not help you as much to get lag. Whereas if I hinge it later, there's more momentum going in that direction away from me or toward the target that can help the club to create some lag. So those are, I typically prefer to see that. But hey, if you're someone who hinges the club a little bit early, you get a nice full shoulder turn and tons of lag, then that's completely fine. You're in good shape. So I'm not sure if that answered exactly what you were saying, but yeah, that's something you can do. So David F says, is your connection Wi-Fi or Ethernet? It's Ethernet. It seems to be working. I missed the discussion on James P. question because of connectivity. Seems to be a common problem with office hours. Typically, I only have connectivity issues if there's like bad weather in the area, and their weather seems to be fine today. So, but yeah, and every now and then there is connectivity issues, but yeah, if you miss something, then I would just go to usually it tells me if there was connectivity issues, and it doesn't look, I never noticed it today. So I'm guessing it may have been on your end, or maybe it was a YouTube issue. But if you ever miss something in the office hours, you can always go to the archived office hours afterwards and check them out. Go to the office hours tab, go to office hours highlights, and if you scroll down on there, you'll see all the archived ones. I'll get this one on there here in a little bit, so you can check the answer. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.